When you're lying in bed at night, do you ever randomly remember some relatively minor social missteps or poorly chosen words you did/said years earlier, and then beat yourself up over it, even though it really wasn't a big deal? If so, what happened? In 7th grade, a cute girl asked me to sit next to her. I said my mom won't let me sit next to girls. My mom said no such thing. If you said cute girls, you'd have been a total baller. So close. That level of smoothness eludes me to this day. When I was in 5th grade, our teacher said a joke in front of the class and everyone laughed, including myself. After the laughter died down, a girl looked up at me and said, "You have a really damn disgusting laugh." Oh, I became so self-conscious about laughter since that specific day, and after years I have trouble actually laughing. My brain kinda made it a habit to just smile or slightly chuckle at something, even if it is really funny. Just belt it out. Fuck that bitch. Kinda ingrained into my brain now. Gotta work on it. I feel that I had to teach myself to make sex noises. I got used to be totally quiet while I was masturbating. I love this single comment on so many levels, lol. Junior prom, I blurted out during dinner to my date, "I'm so bored," and I have no idea why it came out of my mouth. I'm pretty well mannered and quiet. I forget how I tried to play it off, but I felt so bad. I was sitting in a small group of friends in school, and my crush, literally the love of my life at that point, admitted she liked me. It was the happiest moment of my entire life. So naturally I said ooh, in front of everyone. This was 2nd grade, and I still think about it weekly. My friend in 2nd grade made fun of me for liking a girl. He is now married to said girl. Good. Now he has cuties. Who's laughing now, asshole? I went through a phase where I scolded people for reading Harry Potter, because my parents told me it was evil. Lots of awkward situations because of that. I accidentally mixed up an inside joke with the wrong friend group with disastrous results. Friend group #1. The joke was when someone calls and asks who's all there, we would add Daryl to the list of names. Daryl wasn't a real person. The joke wasn't really funny, and made no sense out of context. But I guess that's why it was an inside joke. Friend group #2. I was hanging out playing some drinking games with a bunch of people that I hadn't hung out with in a while. It was a kind of get together to remember a friend that they had who had recently died in a car accident. I didn't know him that well, but I was always down to party. Anyway, the phone rings, and the person who answered started listing off names. Sorting my cards for another round of presidents and arseholes, I offhandedly said, "Hey, and Daryl." It was the typical record scratch moment where everyone stopped and looked at me. Daryl was the name of the friend who had just died. This happened in 2002, and I still think about it all the time. Daryl was there in spirit, and appreciated that you, at least, remembered he was there. I'm sure that's exactly what Op thinks to say all these years later, but in all actuality he just sat there and stewed in the embarrassment of the moment. They looked at him, silent. He grinned for a while. They stared at him, sadly. He laughed with a smile. They watched him with anger. He pondered it slow. He paused for a moment. He whispered, "Oh no." Freshman year of high school. It was one of those days before school starts, and you meet your teacher and your parents are there. My teacher was handing me a piece of paper and I didn't see the paper, so I shook his hand. He said "oh," and my mom said and I panicked and said I just wanted to be polite. So I still want to die when I think of that. That's actually a good recovery. Bruh, I can't even begin to pinpoint one event. I guess one thing is, when I was 11, I asked my teacher if I could go to the bathroom 3 times during class, and told me no, and well, sure enough, I couldn't hold it any longer, and there's bullying for the next 6 months. Literally shakes me in bed about how I have never felt that low before. Somehow I managed to live through it though, lol. We all got flaws. Mine is a bladder that urinates prematurely. Fuck teachers like that. You're not going to miss the most important lesson of your life if you're gone for 3 fucking minutes. I'd just get up and leave and deal with the consequences. It'd be better than pissing yourself, but at that age, you truly don't know what the right decision might be. For most of my education, I went to public school, and like most kids, I was socially awkward. For high school, I received an academic scholarship to a private Catholic school. It was a really big deal for my family. I didn't know anyone at the new school. Between an odd combination of academics, sports and the tail end of puberty, I became very popular in this new school. I wasn't used to the attention and it definitely got to my teenage head. Nearly all of my social circles became around the new school, and not with my old local friends. I'm in my junior year. I head to a McDonald's for lunch with a few friends from the new school. Working the counter, I see a girl who I used to go to public school with, that I used to have a crush on. She just lit up when she saw me. She was so excited. And I was a shitty teenager and I just ignored her. I pretended I didn't recognize her. She looked so deflated when I didn't acknowledge her. Note this was the 90s. My family moved a few times after that. I settled down in a different part of the country after university. I never made it back to that town. I've relived that asshole moment for years now. Fast forward to one of those nights when I relive that moment, and I decide to look her up on Facebook to apologize. I find out she died 10 years ago in an auto accident. Since I found out her fate, I feel even more awful about that moment. This one makes me feel bad, damn. Yeah, I was not ready for that at all. When I was 11, it was my first day at a new school and all the other students were also new. The maths teacher started our first class by asking each of us about our education background, what school we came from, what they taught in our last year's maths class, etc. Just trying to get a general idea of what kind of students he was dealing with. Thing is, I was so nervous that I spaced out for a bit and got lost in my overthinking mind. So I didn't hear the teacher's questions to my classmates. When it got to my turn, the teacher just said, "Now tell me about you." Assuming I understood what kind of information he was expecting, I just went straight into a monologue that started with, "So I was born in the south zone of the city, but my mom decided to move to our current neighborhood a few months after divorcing my dad," and went on and on giving some very specific details about my short life. Everyone had a really confused look on their faces, and as soon as I realized the teacher was also completely lost, I stopped talking and went instantly red. The teacher then said, "That's all really great, but I was only interested in what happened last year, not the last 10. And everyone started laughing. Next day nobody remembered it anymore, but 12 years later it still comes to mind in pretty random moments. I think that is the key takeaway from these stories. No one remembers them but you. Or if anyone else does remember them, it's with a sort of sympathetic that must have been really embarrassing responses everyone's leaving on them here. I was visiting Portland for a wedding that lined up with my birthday as well. We went out to celebrate and finished the night at a karaoke bar. Realizing I'm too drunk to sing, I picked My Name Is by Eminem as my song to perform. There's two versions of that song. One is the original release, the other tamed down, which you most commonly hear today. The woman controlling the music put on the original, and off I went. One of the lines at the end is running over lesbians in a spaceship while they screaming at me, "Let's just be friends." I finish the song, and I'm met by applause from my friends and one other table. The rest of the place is silent. The DJ goes, "Nice job." Don't know if it was the best choice for gay women's night though, and at that moment I wanted to leave my skin. This is very painful. I tried redeeming myself with a wholesome Bill Withers song, but the damage was done. Should have sang "Why Can't We Be Friends" next. I was in the 4th grade, and it was Valentine's Day. I was the new kid in school and this one boy had been picking on me all year. My 10-year-old self was very non-confrontational, so I wrote a paragraph on the back of his Nerd's Valentine explaining that I don't like it when he's mean to me, and I don't understand why he has to be. He couldn't read my handwriting, and brought it to the teacher, who made me read it aloud to both of them. I think about that day every day of my life. He even ended up finding me online and contacting me to apologize a few years ago, but all I can think of is the cringe. I think you were very brave. Was talking with a black friend of mine, and we were discussing random haircuts and styles we would get if we were other races. I said I wanted that common look. He thought I said that common look. I meant the rapper. Shaved head with a nice trimmed up goatee. It didn't dawn on me until a week later why he gave me that weird look after I said it. He thought I was saying that common look every black guy has. Still makes me twitch every once in a while. You could bring it up to him later, maybe discuss haircuts again, and bring up the common look, and this time mention along with it something like, "Yeah dude, common style is so great." Well, it was like 7 years ago, lol, not worth revisiting now for no reason. This happened back when I was 6th or 7th grade. Me and a couple of friends were browsing the neighborhood our school was in after the school day was over. We happened on a bus stop with couple of girls seemingly our age. We stopped and tried to chat them up, but their bus came soon after, and they had to go. We see their bus stop at a traffic light not 20 meters away, and one of us says, "Let's run to the next stop." Nobody thought to ask then what, and off we were, sprinting madly behind the bus. Surprisingly enough, we somehow made it to the next stop, just as the bus was arriving. Then the doors opened. The girls sat there giggling and we did nothing. Literally, I even remember it like the bus driver held the doors a bit longer, but I might be imagining it as the memory is so old. We just sat there, trying to catch our breaths as my lungs burned, and then the doors closed, and the bus went off to the next stop, and none of us said anything. We just walked it off, went on to the next stupid shit we would do. I don't know about any of the other guys, but this still haunts me as one of the cringiest moments of my life so far. I'm like a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught one. Probably start biting the tires. In 7th grade, backquote 06 for me, I had just started watching more anime on Toonami, and was really into it. One day we had to do a paper describing ourselves coming back from summer break and the class had to put a person to a description. I named my favorite jacket, that I wore every day Takashi for fuck knows why, and the cutest new girl in the class read my description out loud, and in it, I described the love for my jacket, and how I had named it was it is. The cute girl looks weirded out, stares at the class and goes, "What weirdo names their jacket?" Once no one guessed who it was, I piped up and said, "Well, maybe they aren't here today." Trying to cover myself. My dumbass forgot though, that this was an in-class assignment, and the teacher said, "No, it had to have been written by someone here." Finally one of my friends goes, "Hey XXXX, aren't you like the only one in class who plays soccer?" Also written in my description. I sunk in my seat as we moved on to the next description. I wake up sweating, feeling that jacket still on my shoulders. She knew the person she was insulting was right there in the room. That was a very mean thing for her to say. She's here in this thread. She's watching us. When I was in the 4th grade, I lived in the middle of nowhere and there was practically no minorities, just white country people. This Mexican family had just moved in and could barely speak any English, and I befriended one of the kids my age in school. He came over to my place and we were both joking around about his bad English, just doing what kids do. I would pretend to speak with his accent, and then he would copy, and it was silly, stupid and innocent. My mom told me I was being really inconsiderate, and how uncool it was to make fun of someone for not being able to speak English. I felt terrible. The next day at school my friend came up to me and started joking with me again, but I just shook my head and looked down at my desk in embarrassment. He had no idea what was wrong, and I was too young and dumb to be able to explain my behavior to him. As I grew older I spent probably 20 years thinking about that day, and how much of a shit I was to be friendly one day, and then without explaining anything just stop talking to him out of embarrassment. I felt really bad about it for a long time, and often laid awake at night thinking about it. I ended up finding him on Facebook about a year ago, and we friended each other, so I told him how bad I felt about it and apologized. He just laughed it off, and said it was no big deal, and he was still really thankful to find someone as friendly as me, when he didn't know anyone here. He said he figured my mom had said something to me about it and it never bothered him. I don't know if maybe he was just being nice to me or not, but it was such a relief to hear it. It really felt like a weight had been lifted off of me. This is the most wholesome thing I've ever read. I've always been thankful that here in Latin America we make all the dumb racist jokes and mean absolutely no ill will behind them. And your mom is woke as fuck, wow. 4th grade classroom. We were having a face-off between students on who could name the capital of whichever state our teacher named. I had been on a roll getting a few correct in a row. Then the teacher says Kentucky, with all of the enthusiasm and seriousness in the world. I screamed Frankfurt. Everyone was dying laughing except for me. At the time, looking back, it cracks me up that I was so upset about it. You were pretty much right. You should tell my teacher that, because she said I lost. When I was 6, my teacher asked us what's our parents' occupation. I said my mum does the dishes. And after 5 minutes of explaining what she does at home, my teacher just took it as my mum is a housewife. My mum is a chemistry teacher, and I told her that I said that when I was 12. You really can't blame me. I didn't really think about where my mum went during her work hours. I just knew she went somewhere, and just kept playing with my toy cars which I stole from my brother. 6-year-olds say weird shit. I doubt your mom or your teacher ever thought anything of it. Yeah, my mum just laughed at me, and then forgot about it. I was in 5th grade or so, and I was sitting in class with a couple classmates. We were talking about Weird Al songs we liked. This one girl asked, "Have you heard some Weird Al song?" And I followed with, "Have you ever heard 'I'm so sick of you'?" Which I guess they hadn't heard, because she looked immediately down at the desk, sort of somber, and that you did a little ho-ho as if I did a nice burn. I guess they thought I was telling this girl I was so sick of her. I had no clue at the time though, so I just let it ride. Still feel bad about that one. You reminded me of a similar situation for me, except I meant it. A girl my buddy had given my number to wouldn't leave me alone, calls at all hours, follows me in the halls, tries to sit with me at lunch. I blocked her number and avoided her at all costs. One day at lunch she sees me, beams at me, and makes a beeline right for me. I'm with all my buddies, and she stands there looking at me and waiting for me to ask her to sit down. Instead, the first thing to pop into my head was to grab a quarter in my pocket, stand up, show it to her, and at the top of my voice yell, "Here's a quarter. Geo, buy yourself some friends." I then bounce it off the table at her, and it hits her square in the forehead, and all she does is stand there while the entire lunchroom explodes in laughter. She runs out with tears streaming down her face. I calmly sit down and continue eating. It was so out of character for me, skinny, introverted band nerd, that it was the talk of the school for weeks about how brutal that was. I still think about it, and it's been 25 years. This is so mean that I think it's only fair that you still think about it after 25 years. In 8th grade I farted once, and a few minutes later, someone smelled it and asked who did it. They asked if it was me, and I just started crying. I used to be very sensitive, and so I thought they were accusing me and felt really bad. So I cried. It's partially because of that I'm now much less emotional and tend to keep my emotions bottled up. I know this isn't funny for you, but this made me laugh out loud. To make you feel better, whoever asked you probably doesn't remember. They are too busy obsessing over their awkward/embarrassing moments. I was visiting my cousin about 4 months ago, and we didn't have the same greeting handshake. So it was like that really weird thing with your hands, where you end up in some super awkward handshake. Last night I thought about this like 20 minutes and blamed myself. SMH, that was super unnecessary. Handshake anxiety is real, and I'd read it. I made a presentation in my public speaking class in college about how antidepressants were bad, and you should seek other methods of treating depression. This was dumb for a few reasons. 1. I just had a bad experience with antidepressants in high school, but apparently could only see my own perspective. 2. It was just a class to teach public speaking methods, and I did not need to pick such a heavy topic. 3. Somehow I was so self-absorbed I could not register the weird looks I was getting from people. And when a classmate said, "Well, that was ballsy," to me after class, I did not understand. 4. I was a psychology major, and I should know better, and I do now. Anyway, that one stabs at me. I also made a presentation in my sociology class, well, semi-high, which was supposed to be about myself and my relationship to society, and I included a bunch of weird modeling pictures and stuff about my eclectic music taste. Oh, I'm so special, I like Missy Elliott and Tom Waits. Is that what this is about? Anyway, I'm going to bury my own head now. I'm way down the page, and this is the first example that wasn't from a very young age. I don't know why I find that so surprising, but I do. When I walked down the aisle at my wedding, I was so nervous and focused on not tripping that I did not acknowledge my dad. I didn't realize this until I saw the video my aunt had made for me. You can see my dad lean in to give me a kiss on the cheek, but I just keep walking. He kind of shrugs and then goes to sit down. It's been 18 years and this still flashes through my head when I'm trying to fall asleep. Also, that time I was trying to get to the school bus and the sidewalk was icy, so I slipped and fell really hard on my butt. The kids on the bus laughed at me, so I chose to sit there with my head down, wishing I could disappear, while the bus drove away, and I walked a mile home. Yes, in the snow, uphill, both ways. Yeah, my dad and I both forgot to hug each other. We did it during the rehearsal and everything, but the day of I think we were both trying not to trip, so we forgot. He felt worse about it than I did. I often lie in bed thinking about an obnoxious thing from grade 9 I wrote in someone's school yearbook. I'm 38 years old. So, what was it? I have ADHD and this is basically my life. If I had $1 for every time I ran my mouth before my brain thought better of it, I wouldn't need to work anymore. And nighttime brain loves to dwell on each and every one. Oh gosh, this comment is too relatable. Shit just flies out of my mouth and sometimes I even have the nerve to look surprised at what I just said. I was around 15 and having a complete breakdown of all aspects of life. My mother had died suddenly. I had untreated mental illness and was self-harming a lot for years and no one was listening. My dad was understandably a wreck and school fell to the wayside. I was barely going and intending on dropping out. I couldn't do anything, let alone it all. There was a high school dance. I was desperate to have some fun and pretty much had us be the highlight before I left. Though I failed at communicating this, I really wanted a friend to dance with me and our other friends. She was awkwardly sitting alone. I pushed her too hard and made her cry. I couldn't see through my own shit to see how bad of a position I put her in. All I could see was my world collapsing. We never spoke again. She went from my best friend to nothing in one night. That was 15 years ago, and I still feel awful. Hindsight is always 20/20 as they say. Hey, I would love to hear how you're doing now. Hopefully a lot better. That sounds like such a dark time to go through. And so young. I'm sorry. Better and worse. I'm less hectically emotional and no longer self-harming. I have better awareness and self-control. But overall I'm more miserable and suicidal with more reason. Still untreated. And there was no real upswing from there that maturity couldn't bring. Consequence makes me stay. My mind says, haven't I fought enough? So no happy ending yet. But then again, I'm only 30. A couple of years ago I was at the drive-up window at my bank. When the transaction was finished, I started to raise my hand to wave goodbye to the teller. But instead of waving, I started to flip him off. It happened completely subconsciously. I don't think I was able to stop it in time because he had a shocked look on his face. I eventually apologized, but I still feel horrible shame over it. Every time I see him the shame comes back. Plus now I have a crush on him. At least you apologized. Would have been a lot weirder if you didn't lol. In primary school, this girl really looked like my friend from the back. I went up to her, tapped her on the shoulder and said hi. Then, played it off like I didn't just mistake her for someone else and left. That was probably 23 years ago now. The first time I met my ex's family I went up and started rubbing his cousin's back thinking it was my ex. He just said wrong dude and backed away silently. I went to Dairy Queen with my daughter. She brought along her kitten. The cute girl at the walk-up window asked my daughter what the kitten's name was. Princess was the response. Smiling and feebly attempting to make conversation, I said today to indicate that my daughter changed the cat's name frequently. I got a dirty look and the girl left the window to go make whatever cold treat we had ordered. It wasn't until later, on the walk home, that I realized that she thought I was telling her to hurry the hell up and make my order. Still haunts me years later for some reason. Sometimes I'm on the other side, where I misunderstand something and give the person a dirty look, only to realize what they really meant later, and then feel mortified. Last year I saw a 4-year kid with his father, and the kid wants to go to X place, but the father wants to go home. So the kid was crying and slowly running to X place and the father was calling him to return now. And Dummy said to the father, if you want I'll go get him for you. And there was a woman laughing at that. And the father with the WTF face said no, thanks. LMAO. It happens. One time this old ass lady was chasing her granddaughter and looked at my dad for help, and my dad just put his hands up by his shoulders. He wasn't getting involved. When I was maybe 12, I lived in an apartment complex which housed a lot of low-income families. One day, a kid was playing with his remote control car while I was hanging out with another friend. As we were walking along, the remote control car came towards us and I kicked it up in the air not thinking much of it and broke it, obviously devastating the kid. But being the immature 12-year-old dipshit I was and peer pressure of my friend we just laughed it off. I remember this kid's mom coming home from work one day and seeing me and ripping into me about how she has to work 2 jobs and she can't give her kids much and how upset he was. In the moment, I felt horrible but didn't have the proper way to process the emotions of it. To this day, this keeps me up at night because I want more than anything to be able to not only replace that remote control car, but somehow someway make it up to the kid, and especially the mom. I couldn't fathom watching my child endure that kind of heartbreak, and not being able to do much about it besides teaching the lesson that some kids can be real assholes. I was the asshole. Dude and mom, if you're out there, I'm so incredibly sorry.